today, which is very exciting because I never heard that there were Africans before, prior to the colonial period, because I came across some colonial accounts. There were African slaves, but I didn't hear that there were even African kingdoms that emerged on the western coast of India. So about the speaker, Dr. Manish Karamwar is an assistant professor at Shyam College, University of Delhi, associated with the Department of African Studies.
Today I'm going to discuss about African diaspora in India, a historical study. Africans came to India in different circumstances through the different ages, from the ancient time to the medieval and early modern time. They played a vital role in the court politics of various dynasties. The study covers the area where Africans' dispersal is more prominent, like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Goa, and Andhra Pradesh. There are traces of Africans' role in socio-political and military life during the period of Delhi Sultanate, Nizam Shahi, Qutub Shahi, Mughal India, and also in Hyderabad till India's independence. They came as a migrant, traders, and sometimes as slaves, and were absorbed in the military and administrative services. Their involvement in court politics increased so much sometimes that they emerged as kingmaker also. In Janjira and Sindh and the Sachin kingdom, they rose from kingmakers to emperors. Some of Africans who rose to position of considerable importance were Malik Sarwar, Mubarak Shah, Malik Sandal, Yaqut, Hapsi, and Ulugh Khan. So my point of contention, the objective of this whole paper is somehow the field which are more focused are Africa migration with a special reference to Indian Ocean trade, the two African kingdoms, Janjira and Sachin, socio-economic condition of cities and their role and place in Indian society. This work is devoted to find how African migrants were transported to India from different regions of Africa in early days and how fairly well settled and assimilated in Indian society. The study also tries to convince the fact that Indian culture has been enriched, influenced by African culture, and African diaspora played a significant role in socio-political and economic condition of India. So I can divide my topic into 4 or 5 major areas. First, we have to understand about the geographical area where Africans came in India and where they settled themselves and assimilated to the Indian society. Like African dispersal in India covers several state provinces, namely Bengal, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Daman, Diu, Goa, and Andhra Pradesh. In Gujarat, they are found in districts of Surat, Ahmedabad, Amreli, Jamnagar, Junagadh, Rajkot, and Bhavnagar, Bharuch near Ratnapur, and the former kingdom of Kutch. They are normally settled in area of their own, but in Ahmedabad, Bharuch, and Kutch, they live in mixed area as they do in Pradesh of Andhra, parts of Andhra Pradesh. In Karnataka, they are concentrated around Yalapur, Haliyal, Ankola, and the Belgaum and Dharwad district. Their language is a mix of Siddhi Konkani, Siddhi Marathi. They also speak Kannada. In Maharashtra, they are settled in Raigad district. In Uttar Pradesh, they are settled in Jaunpur, the Sarki dynasty, Jaunpur. According to 1981 census, the population of Siddhi tribe were 54,291. But Siddhi who are designated as a scheduled tribe are 8,662. And the city of 6th Saurashtra district of Rajkot division, namely Junagadh, Bhavnagar, Rajkot, Amreli, and Sundarnagar, Jamnagar has been designated as a scheduled tribe since 1957. None other than this area, they scheduled as a scheduled tribe. And now I'm going to discuss about the trade connection, because very old topic, India and Africa. We had a very great trade relation between India and Africa. So I'm going to discuss somehow some archaeological evidence also to establish the trade relation between India and Africa. There are a host of material which shows the Indian and Africans next door neighbors as they are, have had close and friendly relations for time immemorial. For centuries, the people of littoral region of Indian Ocean have conducted free and flourishing trade even much before Greek sailor guide the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea was written. Archaeological excavation at the site of Rojdi in Gujarat have revealed the presence of domesticated grains that had origin in Africa. These include finger millet dating around 2500 BC to 2300 BC. Given this scenario, an element of surprise is that the earliest archaeological evidence of maritime activity in India brought to light by S.R. Rao while excavating Lothal includes the terracotta model of an African gorilla and mummy. This human interaction was greatly facilitated by the trade wind. Writings of Strabo, Pliny, Ptolemy, Periplus, and Cosmos also indicated the Asian trade relation between Indian subcontinent and East African coast. These are the only trade. Now we didn't have the settlement in Africa, in India, Africans in India at that time. These are the only trade relation between India and Africa. There were important ports and harbors on the western coast of India, identified by them as Barbaricum, Barigaja, Sopara, in Gujarat, Kakori, Puhar, Mujris. Periplus of the Athenian Sea explains India's wider trade with Socotra also, as well as with the mainland coast of Africa and Arabia. Forced migration of Africans to India increased in 6th century when Arabs became the master of Indian Ocean and expanded their trade in India in the Konkan port. The Arabs had not only monopolized the early trade between Arabia and Malabar, but also made several settlements in Malabar and Konkan coast. Significant numbers of slaves entered North India after the expansion of Islam at the end of 10th century. The first cities are to have arrived in India in 628 at the Varuj in Gujarat. Several others follow with the first Arab Islamic invasion in the subcontinent in 712 AD. The later groups was believed to have been soldiers with Muhammad bin Qasim Arab army and were called Janjis. One is Siddhis and other is Janjis. In the 13th century, slaves seem to have become obtained through the slave markets. Enslaved Abyssinians were soldiers, concubines, and the eunuchs in Muslim India. In the 13th and 14th century, slaves were mainly drawn from Lower Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Sudan, the Nile area. Many of them ended up being so-called slave soldiers in the armies of conquerors and sultans all over the Islamic world. After the 16th century, when the Europeans, especially the Portuguese, entered the scene, slave trade routes moved further south and eastern African coast. As far as Mozambique, slaves were drawn from the hinterland of the coastal region, which as inland Tanzania, Malawi, and even the Congo. In the 19th century, Zanzibar emerged as the hub for the distribution of African slaves, mainly to Arabia, southern Persia, and the western India. Now, 3/4 of the population of Zanzibar consisted then in slaves serving the aristocracy and wealthy traders. Even after the nominal abolition of the slave trade by British, a small number of male and female African slaves continued to ship to the western coast of South Asia, especially to Makran and Gujarat, where they were mostly employed as a servant and bodyguards at the courts of local rulers. Several Africans played an important role in different Indian dynasties. The first Hapsi, whom there is historical record, was probably Jamal Din Yaqut, royal courtier in the kingdom of Delhi, Rajia Sultan. In the north of the subcontinent, Hapsi were also reported in the interiors of northern India. Ibn Battuta recalls at the Alapur in UP, Badayu district, the governor was the Abyssinian Badr, a man whose bravery passes into a proverb. African had a high profile in Indian politics arena from the 14th and 19th century in various parts of India. African also wielded power in East Africa. The ruler of Bengal, Sultan Ruknuddin Babak Shah, had 8,000 African slaves, some of whom he elevated to the high ranks. Babak Shah's grandson Sikandar II was deposed in 1481 after only a few months. His successor Jalaluddin Fateh Shah attempted to control the power of Hapsis in 1486. However, under the leadership of the chief eunuch Sultan Shahjad, the Hafsis conspired, murdered Fateh Shah, and gained the throne of Bengal. The Siddhis controlled the island of Janjira almost 300 years. Janjira was the important as base for commerce and the interior of India. The Siddhis were the unchallenged masters of the Konkan coast from 1601 until 1870, when they formally submitted to the British. The most famous Hapsi in Indian history is Malik Amba, who defeated the Mughal army, became the Wazir, and ruled the western Deccan from Aurangabad since 1600 to 1626. He is renowned for his public works like mosque, palaces, schools, storm water system, and for his military and administrative achievements. After African Dilawar Khan, another African Dilawar Khan served as a minister of revenue under Sultan Mahmud Shah, the last Bahmani to exercise any authority. He is also said to have dismissed almost 6,000 soldiers who followed the Shia sect of Islam, replacing them with Africans of the Sunni persuasion. Another prominent African figure was Khawas Khan Hapsi of Bijapur, who became Wazir of the Sultan till he overthrown in 1675. The turning point in Hyderabad history came under the 30 years of prime ministership of Salah Jung I during 1853, 1830, 1883. During the Jiladari of the Raja of Waranpati, which was part of the Nizam's domination, the first batch of Africans was brought here. The Raja Rameswar Rai I of Waranpati was increased in building up a disciplined army force under his command. He imported Siddhi from the Somalia and Abyssinia and organized them into two regiments. One is Siddhi soldiers known as African Bodyguard, now still African Cavalry Guards, and another regiment of Siddhi cavalry known as Waranpati Lancers. On account of conflict between the Raja's troop and the Nizams, the British Residency intervened and arranged a triplet treaty by which the Raja presented his African bodyguard and Waranpati Lancers to the Nizam, while he was appointed the Inspector General of Nizam's field force. The Nizam also agreed to respect the Raja autonomy. About these Siddhis, the Siddhis were trustworthy, quickly earned the confidence of the Nizam and his court, and were appointed as his bodyguard. Brigadier Ali Beg served as the commandant of non-Indian state force and was also commander of the Nizam force. African bodyguards were also under his command. These Siddhis used to flank the throne of the Nizams. These Abyssinians were good soldiers also. The Siddhi, he said, was honest and upright. And I'm not going to details about the Janjira and Sachin, the two important African kingdoms, but in few lines, the two African kingdoms survived in India until the independence of India. These were Janjira in Maharashtra and Sachin in Gujarat. Janjira came into prominence in the 15th or early 16th century, and the Sachin state was the second-class state in Bombay Presidency. Sachin, the capital of the state, was about 10 miles south of the Surat in the province of Gujarat. So the Nawab of Sachin was Abyssinians by descent. They made their fullest appearance in India sometime during the latter half of the 15th century as members and the freebooters. The title of Nawab was first conferred on the rulers of Sachin by Emperor Shah Alam II in about 1797 on payment of Najrana. The Nawab was entitled by a dynastic salute of 9 guns. Now we move toward the contemporary socio-economic condition of Siddhis. The Siddhis are one of the most interesting scheduled tribe in India, being only ethnic group among the population of mainland in India which possesses well-defined and uncontroversial Negroid features. There are also some aristocratic families in Siddhi origin like the Jafrabad house, but they do not appear to have any social relation with ordinary Siddhis of Gujarat. They considered the latter as lower in status and tend to take wives from the other aristocratic Muslim families. As a result of intermixing of blood, they differ of some extent in complexion, appearance, from the other cities. It seems that in absence to continued social relation with the general mass of cities, these aristocratic family do not have much important role in social organization and cultural orientation of the community. So here I am going to talk about the cities, the general mass of African who now live in India. I am not going to talk about the aristocratic cities who came or who established themselves as a aristocratic class. Now, when I am talking about the economic structure, obviously they are poor. The cities have made rather poor progress in the field of education. In the rural area, they have taken up agriculture for quite some time. In urban area, the cities have taken up jobs such as those of fitters, factory workers, watchmen, and the truck driver. As laborers, they are also engaged in the construction work or as coolie in the port area, while others pull handcraft in marketplace, and some of them drive trucks. These are the economic condition of cities. When I went Gujarat and mainly Gujarat, Surat, Ahmedabad, they used to survive with these kind of work. We need to give some extra economic advantage to these cities, definitely, because they are living India since 6th, 7th century, but they now not involved in the government jobs or in kind of lucrative jobs, but they are still searching a position in Indian economic society. They assimilated themselves into the cultural and social structure, but still they are finding position in the economic strata. So when we are discussing about the social fabric, the cities trace their descent along with the male line. It is very rarely that the married son continued to live with their parent. In nuclear type of family, among the cities does not give much scope for a larger household. Usually 5 to 6 persons live in a household. Cities regarded infertility as the result of rage of God. When a woman does not beget a child for quite some time after marriage, the chief deity Nagarcha Pir is appeased and woe is taken. It is either implicit faith that the Pir blessings will fulfill their blessings, same as Indian culture. However, Indian culture. However, calamities during and after delivery, like stillbirth, abortion, miscarriage, infant death, etc., are considered to be the will of God and not necessarily His anger, and they have adopted more philosophical attitude towards the such misfortunes. A new mother is given advice about child care by her elderly female relatives, as usual in Indian society also. On the 6th day after the birth of the child, the Chhathi ceremony is performed. And these Siddhis, they are not so much intermingle apart from their own clan. So this is most important. They used to use Chhathi ceremony is performed when the child is bathed and dressed in new clothes. When the child is 5 to 7 years old, the Siddhis sometimes perform Akiko, which is accompanied by certain religious ceremony. On this occasion, the child's head is shaved and feta is done. Feta, that means the pagri in Indian sense. Also, 2 goats are sacrificed if the child is a male, and one goat is sacrificed if the child is female. The Siddhis do not perform any puberty rituals for either sex. They, however, practice circumcision for the male is keeping with the practice among the other Muslim communities. This ceremony is known as Sunnat Sadi. It is said by Siddhi that nikah of a boy cannot be performed unless he has been circumcised. They say that if this came to know that the Siddhi woman has given birth to a child bearing non-Siddhi features, they will choke the child to death. These are the some obvious cruel rituals in those areas. The Siddhis are divided into a number of clans. They do not marry within the same clan. Cross-cousin marriage is, however, extant among them. The Siddhis permit their widow to remarry. Among the Siddhi, followers of three religions, namely Islam, Hinduism and Christianity are found. Most of them, however, are adherent to Islam. In Maharashtra and Karnataka, Hindu Muslims as well as Christian Siddhi are found. The Hindu Siddhis are also referred to as Maharashtra Siddhi in Gujarat. However, the Siddhis are mostly Muslims. They are Sunnis of Hanafi school. It is interesting that the faith of Awliyas and Pir is very widespread among them. The chief object of worship is Baba Gaur, an Abyssinian saint whose tomb stands on a hill of Ratnapur village of the former Rajpipla estate, and the Baba Gaur is the most important figure in the Siddhis across the western coast of India, basically in Gujarat. The Siddhi has also a strong belief in ghosts, evil spirits. If any person is affected by an evil spirit, he is taken to the dargah as usual. Now I'm talking about the cultural assimilation. It's the most important part of my presentation. It is a cultural assimilation. Since the early medieval era, Africans who came with Persians, Turks and Arabs have contributed to the socio-cultural landscape of India. In particular, the Siddhi carried their musical tradition with them. Today, Siddhi Goma group performed in India and abroad. Siddhi known to this Goma group, and they performed India as well as abroad also. They played sacred music and dance as wandering fakirs, singing to the Siddhi saints Baba Gaur. They performed dhamal, which they call Goma in Swahili word, which means drum. The most significant African retention is the Malunga, which is found in many African communities. Siddhi servants performed Goma dance with drum, rattles and cells on birthdays and weddings in the noble courts. Baba Gaur Urs is celebrated over several days, and it is an occasion for playing dhamal music and dancing. Music seems to be main African cultural retention in the Hyderabad Siddhis also, who excel in music. They have drum bands that played African drums and hired to play music and dance in African ways. On special occasions such as weddings, they had learned songs that are sung in Bantu languages in Tanzania during spirit procession rituals to affect healing. Africans' retention also remain in Swahili world in the lyrics of the song of the Siddhis and the name of musical instrument of the Siddhis. Siddhis in Karnataka play the gumant, a type of drum, is also used by Indian musicians in Goa and Goan diaspora. In Karnataka, among the Siddhis families, there are Catholics, Hindus and Muslims. In Haliyal, there are only Muslims and Christians, and in Ghat area of Yelapur and Ankola, only Hindus. The Siddhis people are divided into three religious groups for which a distinct Siddhi self-identity has not yet been developed. Some of the Christians changed their religion after settling in the forest of Kanara. After living the generation among Hindus, they considered themselves to be Hindus. The individual families easily came under the influence and rituals and religious practices of the Hindu-dominated group, but the names of common use are partly Christians, likely Tamasia, Thomas, Mania, Manuel, Bastia, Sebastian, and the Pasya, Francis, and partly Canaries as Puha, Sana, Gompa, and Lokdas. The women name are all Canaries as Jitu, Puti, Lakshmi, Gampi, Somi, Sukri, and Nagu. The Christians' name found among the men and their absence among the women support the tradition that when the men fled from Goa, they had left their spouse behind and later married Canaries woman, so the whom they said to be a Brahmin, sometime Brahmin outcast. They speak Marathi, actually in mixed of Marathi and Konkani and Kannada. The Siddhi Hindu has become part of the local caste hierarchy. One common feature of all Siddhis found in Karnataka, as also those in Maharashtra and Goa, is that they have retained some of their original culture. A stranger to area would not be a position to distinguish the Siddhi from other groups except though their racial characteristics. Now, this is the important feature of my presentation. Obviously, they assimilated themselves into Indian society, but not a single point. The Siddhi do not suffer from any sort of prejudice, other racial or cultural, because due to the Afro-Indians. Sometimes they had, but not because they had the Africans who came to India and settled themselves. They adopted. We had adopted Africans as Indo-Africans. So my contention is the Siddhis do not suffer from any sort of prejudice, either racial or cultural. Moreover, there are no pressure to change. Whatever changes have taken place is voluntary. As I mentioned, in the Karnataka, they in the Gujarat area, they much more intermingle into the African perception. But in Karnataka and somehow Andhra Pradesh, they mix up themselves into the local people. And when we are talking about the aristocratic Africans, they intermingle with the aristocratic Muslim class in India. And now here I compare to the Atlantic slave trade and Indian Ocean trade. Unlike Negro slave in the New World, slave in Muslim India were largely free from racial discrimination. Their role in the history of India is significant. There is no substantial evidence to show that there are great demand of African slave in India. In a land teeming with the surplus labor, it could hardly be accepted that there would be great need for foreign slaves. On a striking aspect of the export of labor from East Africa was massive use of African as soldiers, apart from the soldiers, sailor and servant, but not slave. We are not bring the slave in Indian society. Africans also migrated as free merchants. Numerous Africans rose to position of authority as generals and governors, even the eunuchs at princely courts. African migration in India is a much older, more complex phenomenon than the black-white image of the Atlantic mode. The Siddhis of India have found their place in India's complex hierarchy of caste and tribes. Thank you very much for my, thank you.